this is where ding, 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 it hit me. And I started watching it. It's like the timeline was right along my journey. The Ozempic timeline coming out and what I was going through because of my injury. It wasn't even an Ozempic thing. And I started hearing people around me taking Wegovy and Ozempic, and they were losing weight quickly. Ozempic is there to help people who are diabetic.
Right.
To lose the weight, to take the pressure off of their body, and that can heal the vagus nerve, but they also end up having sometimes worse issues because of it.
I found out I was pre-diabetic. When I was first diagnosed, Jenny, in January of 2023, Ozempic was not in the zeitgeist like it is now. I was able to turn it around just through diet. I found out in May of this year that I had turned it around. Yay! Thank you. Jenny, let's talk about Hollywood's dirty little secret.
Well, and this is where, when we were talking, I told you about the Gastroparesis group. This is where, ding, 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 it hit me, and I started watching it. It's like the timeline was right along my journey. And
Ozempic?
The Ozempic timeline coming out and what I was going through because of my injury. It wasn't even an Ozempic thing. And I started hearing people around me taking Wegovy and Ozempic, and they were losing weight quickly. But then I started watching it, and there were like quite a few different polls. You know how you can do a Facebook poll where they say, how did you, I'll just give you an example. For in our Gastroparesis group for support, they would say, how did you get gastroparesis? What was your experience? And there were different ways. And it would say Ozempic, Wegovy, Semaglutide. I think that's the name of it.
They're both Semaglutides.
Yeah. And then, and there's a list of them. And then diabetes. It's very common to have a vagus nerve gastroparesis because of diabetes.
I just heard that last night. I was actually watching an interview with Callie Means about Ozempic, and I only learned that last night.
Yeah, and it's so weird because Ozempic is there to help people who are diabetic,
right,
to lose the weight, to take the pressure off of their body, and that can heal the vagus nerve, but they also end up having sometimes worse issues because of it. And then, like, there are people who have it because of, like me, injury, or it was nicked in a surgery. Somebody clipped that part of the nerve. So they want to know, okay, how did you get it? And then you can kind of branch off and be like, okay, these people, I can relate to their injury, and this is how their body's acting. Or because they're on these medications, this is what's happening. And it was really interesting. I thought for sure that the highest amount of people would be because of diabetes, right? In my observations, and I'm not a scientist, I haven't done an official poll or just scientific whatever, but from my observations, more and more people were having gastroparesis because of these drugs. Whether it was because they had diabetes and were given the drug, so which is it, egg or the chicken, you know?
Which came first.
Or because they just did it for weight loss. And I started thinking, oh my gosh. And then hearing all these other people around me who, you know, in Hollywood, my neighbors, my friends, everybody getting on this drug. And I'm sitting there with a huge stop sign. No, don't do it. Oh my gosh.
Well, let's talk about everyone jumping on the Ozempic bandwagon. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I'll just quickly tell you my experience, Jenny. In January of 2023, I found out I was pre-diabetic, and I wasn't actually being screened for pre-diabetes. My doctor wanted to do a blood draw to check my, let's see, I'm blanking out, my liver function, because I take an antidepressant, and they need to check it periodically. Well, when I saw the results of the blood test, and I saw I was in the pre-diabetic range, which starts at 5.7 for your A1C, and I was at 5.9. This was not good news. My father, you know, was diabetic. The last year and a half of his life was awful. He lost a leg to diabetes at 90 years old. He died a year later. It was very traumatic. I did not want to go down that road.
Well, and even though he was 90, watching how he had to go, it's not like, oh, you're 90, it's not a big deal. It's a big deal.
It was devastating for all of us, for the whole family. So I talked to my doctor immediately after finding out the results, accidentally finding out I was pre-diabetic. And he referred me to a dietitian nutritionist, Katie, who is incredible. I started working with her. I was able to turn it around just through diet. I found out in May of this year that I turned it around.
Yay!
Thank you. I had an office visit with Katie. She's like, I'd like to see you get your A1C down to 5.6. I left her office and went and got a fasting blood draw, and it was 5.5.
That's awesome.
So thank you. I was able to turn it around.
Yeah, it's possible, right?
Yes, but when I was first diagnosed, Jenny, in January of 2023, Ozempic was not in the zeitgeist like it is now. At that time, my doctor at Swedish was like, yeah, totally backed me to turn it around naturally.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but he had changed his tune a year and a few months later. When I get on a Zoom call with him, I instantly notice he's lost a lot of weight.
Oh, okay.
Didn't realize he was taking Ozempic himself and had drunk the Kool-Aid and suggested it to me. And I was like, I'm fine with my slow progress. And then he also mentioned a nurse, an ARNP that I also see. He said, oh, she would never diagnose it. And to my surprise, she mentioned it as well. She's since, she doesn't push it anymore. But he mentioned it during my physical that I had just a couple months ago. And I was like, no, not going to do it. But I want to talk about Hollywood and your take on what's going on, because it's wild.
It is wild. And I mean, not to flip the script here, but I want to ask you a question. Was it easy to lose the weight?
No. Well, yes and no. I mean,
right? No,
I have
that's honest. I mean, that is so honest.
I had to completely change my habits.
And premenopause, or menopause.
And now I'm postmenopausal, so I was like in the thick of menopause at the same time.
Right, and it isn't easy.
No.
I mean, I've worked with women for so many years. That in like gynecology and stuff with midwifing, and it's always like trying to lose the baby weight, and all of that, and it's not easy. And what are we? An easy society.
We want the quick fix.
Yep.
Quick lickety split.
Now. Yeah, and and I think people were lying about it at first, and now it's kind of a joke, and everybody's like, nope, I'm doing it,
Well, I mean, come on, Hollywood, like, you're so full of it. It's like, I mean, I don't know if I can actually name names, and I will not do that because I don't want to get sued. I don't know who's even going to watch this, but I mean, come on.
There are people that you've seen, and we've all seen, who have worked with weight loss their entire lives. We've seen them since we were 5 years old, stressing about weight loss. And I also will not name names, but all of a sudden they've conquered it. With every other star, I can line them up. And when we did this, we were talking, and I was like, Ozempic, 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 Ozempic. And you can tell because these are people who looked normal before.
Yes.
Beautiful. And they
didn't need to lose weight, but of course, by Hollywood's ridiculous standards, they felt like they had to.
Yeah, and I think it's just this idea of extremism. Like it's never enough. I mean, they can't just be beautiful. They got to have gold teeth. We got to have purple hair. No offense, but you know what I mean. Everything just has to be over the top.
Right.
And with weight loss, the thing is that guess what? Too much can be too much. You are killing yourselves, and not just killing yourselves, but killing an entire generation that is measuring everything they do. I mean, little girls are dressing like certain pop stars.
Yes.
And again, I won't name names.
Yes.
And doing things that these pop stars would do because they measure everything with the Hollywood lenses. So we had a movement that I was very proud of for a while, where we were actually on top of advertising places that were pushing skeletal models. That there was a huge crackdown. Do you remember that? It's a huge crackdown, and I can't remember if it was the end of 90s, beginning of 2000s. I'm so old, I don't remember. But I remember thinking, okay, we're figuring it out. These women are being celebrated for killing themselves.
Wow.
These models are dying because we're celebrating and making that a norm and a push. That was a really big movement. And I thought, wow, this is right up there with right now us fighting Kellogg's for dye, and unhealthy things for our children. But how is it that we as a society have flipped again? Now we're not focused on the healthy Barbie size, and as you've watched, it doesn't stop. And that's the scary thing with Ozempic and most of these things, it can be the mental state of the person who is like, I'm not giving it up because I love this, and this addiction, this high of smaller and smaller pant size, and being able to dress in little kids' clothes, like all of that. It can be a mental thing that it's their obsession now and they're not going to pull back on. Or is it the fact that they have damaged, we're going to go back because these drugs damage your vagus nerve and your body's ability to function properly. Many of these people who have gone off of these drugs, and I know this because in my site, many of them will talk about how many years they've been off of it on the Gastroparesis support group. And they will say they've been off of it for years and years and years, and it's permanent damage.
Yeah. Have you heard of Johann Hari's book, Magic Pill?
I have not.
So that's really, at the moment, the only book that's out right now about Ozempic, and he documents all the horrible potential side effects. He chooses to be on it and stay on it, despite the fact that he knows.
Wow, that's interesting.
And
that's not to say that every single person has these things happen immediately, or that's the hard thing, is like he probably is not having horrible side effects or tipped that way.
Well, there's a spectrum, and Katie, my dietitian nutritionist, told me, she said it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
Some people lose weight on it, some people do not. Gastroparesis, it can paralyze your stomach for some people. Some people can hardly eat anything.
Or chronic diarrhea.
Right, vomiting, the whole 9 yards.
Not feeling hungry. Because everything just, like, for instance, my stomach doesn't growl. It's I'm in a healing phase, like it ebbs and flows, and there's some times when I'm at my most optimum, like zen, I guess, and choosing to be very calm and things, and I will have the strength, and I'll start feeling a little bit of growling in my stomach, and I can hold a little bit more food and a little bit broader spectrum of food, but it's still my very best is still like someone who has a bariatric sleeve at my very best. Okay. But when all of that is going on, you're like, okay, this is a good turn, but then you could end up just right back where you were, With all of that being said, I feel like Hollywood has made a choice, and a lot of them will have consequences that for themselves or someone who's following suit can be detrimental to their mental health, because your mental health is involved with calories. Well,
and these drugs, because I'm going to be interviewing someone coming up who became psychotic.
Oh, really?
From this.
Was it from the weight loss or chemicals in the drug?
Chemicals in the drug.
Really, that's really fascinating. I know I do have a friend whose daughter was extremely overweight and had a lot of physical problems and back injury and stuff. And her doctor told her to go on to one of these drugs. She already had gastrointestinal issues, and she got on it and had started losing some weight immediately. And this was right when I had gotten sick. And she started saying, Jen, you're having symptoms that are so much like some things that my daughter's telling me is happening to her. And I said, get her off of whatever she's on. And she's like, no, I don't think it's the same. Within like a week of our conversation talking about this, she was hospitalized. She was on IVs because she couldn't even swallow water. And she's throwing up so violently, it like could have killed her.
That's horrible.
You
know what I learned from watching this YouTube video last night? I learned that the problem with the dosage, let's take Ozempic, and it's in a pen that you have to inject. Right, you can inject it in your stomach or your leg or your thigh, I believe, once a week. I was watching this interview, and the woman that one of the two people that was being interviewed is a naturopath. She said the dosage in those pens is so high.
Yeah.
And that's what's causing these horrifying side effects.
Well, and I mean, every other drug, isn't it measured on your weight, on your this or that? But don't you just all get the same syringe and they just...
Right, and most doctors will ease you into it. You know, they'll titrate it. They'll start with a low dosage and then slowly work up. Whereas with these pens, you're just getting a ton of semaglutides in there.
Well, and there are things that I think young people don't realize that we need to talk about, is that when you lose weight like this, you don't just lose adipose.
No. You actually lose 20% of muscle mass that you can never get back.
Yes. And you're losing your myelin sheath on your nerves. You are losing your hair. You are losing your teeth. You're losing your eyesight. That is one thing that I have a problem with now because of inflammation in my eyes with the vagus nerve. There are so many parts of your wonderful, youthful, beautiful life that you're putting on an altar for an image that has become our God. To become...
Yes, we're worshiping the God of thinness.
Yeah.
Whether it's healthy or not.
Yeah. And it's this craze, this mindset of like, it doesn't matter. I'll give anything to be thin.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating to me.
Yeah. And it's humbling for me, Jenny, as a middle-aged woman. I'm like, you know, I'm never going to get into size 4 again. I'm okay with that. You know, I'm okay never getting into a size 6 again. Like, I'd rather be healthy. Yeah. Jenny, thank you so much for being here with me today.
I hope that my experience can help someone. I know it wasn't Ozempic, but the idea and the mindset, that's the shift. That I really hope if anybody takes anything away from this, it's that we need to put our minds in a place where we're not so outwardly focused, and so much so that we're willing to put ourselves, our children, our future generations on an altar for the praise of man, but to be grateful for what we have, like the bodies that we've been given, take care of them. There's so many tools to do it in the right way, and just cherish it, you know?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this incredible story. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Until next time, be well.